You probably clicked on this video because you're shooting Cinestill 800T and you can't figure out why it looks like a muddy mess. And I'm here to show you how to make your Cinestill 800T look great, like this photo here. The highlights look great, the shadows look great, and it looks cinematic. And I'm basically making this video today because I'm seeing a lot of videos come out online that say that Cinestill sucks because they look muddy, it's pricey, and all it's good for is night neon lighting and gas stations. I'm here to show you that Cinestill 800T is a cinematic film and not just meant for neon lights. Now before we dive into this video, we gotta discuss what is Cinestill 800T. So Cinestill 800T is Kodak Vision 3 500T. So it's actually rated for 500 instead of 800. And the Kodak Vision 3 film has a remjet layer. So what Cinestill 800T is it's this Vision 3 film without the remjet layer. And what the remjet layer is it's a backing to the emulsion that prevents the light from reflecting from the back of the film back to the front and creating halation. Halation is an orange-red glow around the extreme highlights of the photo. Also, the remjet layer is used for anti-static because with motion picture, the film is moving at a high speed, so it has the tendency to create static. But here for still pictures, that doesn't matter. Cinestill removes this remjet layer because you can't process this film in regular C41 chemicals, and there's very few labs that process the remjet layer. So Cinestill makes it easy for shooters to shoot this film. You could develop at any lab that does color film, which is pretty much all of them. Cinestill has a leg up on other companies because they have a contract with Kodak where Kodak will make the Vision 3 film without the remjet layer and deliver it directly to Cinestill. Where other companies, if they get their hands on this Vision 3 film, they have to remove the remjet layer through a chemical process and then re-spool it, which causes some scratching on the film. So at least with Cinestill, you know it's more of in a pristine condition because it doesn't have to go through that extra processing that other companies have to go through to provide this Vision 3 film without the remjet layer. So now that we know what Cinestill 800T is, I'm going to show you my night photo shoot I did. So I would like to introduce you to my new camera. It is the Mamiya RB67. I got this guy in Kyoto when I went to Japan. So I found a small camera shop, and when I went in I saw that they had this Mamiya sitting there, and I wanted a Mamiya for the longest time. And I talked with them, kind of discussed what kind of maintenance it went through, and then they allowed me just to take a look at it. I did some calculations, dropped the money, or yen. I was able to get this camera, and I actually got to try the camera out in Japan. I can show you those photos in another video. Also in another video, I'm going to go through the technical background of this camera and how to use it. So look out for that video, so please subscribe so you be able to be notified when that video comes out. But for right now, we're mainly going to focus on the Cinestill rather than the camera, because also this is a medium format camera, and I do show examples of 35mm, so stay tuned towards the end of the video to see the 35mm examples. So now let's dive into the photos. So these are my two favorite photos from this shoot. I used RGB lighting. They're sharp, and you might be wondering the technical information of how I was able to produce these photos. So starting, this is the huge tip on how to make Cinestill 800T look great, and it's by rating it for 500 speed. I'm rating at 500 because that is what the film is. It is 500T. Cinestill says that to rate it at 800 because with the C41 processing, it basically pushes the film, but I find that rating at 500 works the best. Vision 3 film loves light, so the more light you could get onto this film, the better. And Vision 3 film handles overexposure really well, so just feed it as much light as you can. Don't overdo it where your highlights are blown out and you get that halation. Always err on the side of caution and go with a little bit overexposed. So that 500 is basically baking in, letting in that extra light to make these photos look good. As for metering, I spot metered the face, and only the face, because that's the most important part. The photo would suck if you don't have proper exposure on the face. So on the face, I chose the most representative area. So I didn't want to pick somewhere too light because then the shadows will look muddy. And I don't want to pick somewhere too dark because then the highlights will be blown out and you have the halation. So I picked a representative area and I was able to get a good exposure. Now, because this is at night and it's a medium format camera, I was playing around in the f-stop of 6.7. I chose 6.7 because I wanted the focal range to be wider and not razor thin. This allowed basically the model to move a little bit and not come out of the range of focus as they're staying still. Now, because of this high f-stop, my shutter speed usually hovered around for this shoot a quarter of a second to a half second. So the model had to stay very still. So another tip when using this specific camera is I use the mirror lockup function. So basically with this camera, normally the mirror will come up, slap against the top of the camera, and then the shutter will open. But mirror slapping up against the top of the camera adds vibration. So this camera allows me to lock the camera up, release the shutter at a different point. So I press the shutter button and it brings the mirror up and the shutter remains closed. Then I have a shutter release cable connected to the lens that allows me to then open the lens for the shutter speed length of time. And this basically eliminated all the factors that come from me as the photographer where motion blur could be introduced. Any point after that, it's all up to the model for staying still. So that's how I was able to accomplish such sharp photos from this shoot. Also, the camera is on a tripod. Properly exposing the photo, eliminating as much motion blur as possible, and rating the film at 500 were the tips to making these photos look great. Now, here are some other photos. These ones I took close to a street light and then also used a light wand to introduce light into the shadowy parts of the face. And here you can see that the male model is wearing a white shirt and it's not causing halation on the white shirt because the picture is properly exposed. As long as we properly expose these photos and don't blow out the highlights, we're going to be good with halation. And this is how we can make these photos look cinematic rather than just using this film for gas stations. Here are a couple more photos where I put the models directly under the street light. So now the street light's very bright, right on top of the models, and you could see again, there's no halation, and with proper exposure, everything looks great. This is the point where you're going to say, well, you're using a medium format camera. That's why these photos look good. Well, the medium format camera doesn't create good pictures. It's always up to the photographer. The photographer has to create good exposure, and the photographer has to understand the film that they're working with. So I'm going to show you 35mm with 800T, where I exposed the same way, and I rated it at 500. But this time it's outdoors in the sun. I have another video on my channel that really dives deep in using Cinestill 800T in the daylight. So I'm just going to grab a couple photos from that video and shoot and show them here. So here you can see that even in the daylight, rated at 500, if you expose properly, there's barely any halation in these photos, and they look great. And they look cinematic, and the color chemistry of the film emotion really shines. And notice how these pictures do not look muddy because they're being properly exposed and having enough light to give enough detail in the shadows. During post is where you could bring the shadows back down, and at least you have the detail there so you don't have this muddy looking photo. And the secret is really in rating this film at 500. That goes for medium format and 35mm. So what I hope you gain from this video is understanding how this film works and how to properly use it during your shoots. And hopefully this helps you become more artistic with the film and maybe make more cinematic shots rather than buying this film and going to a gas station or going to neon lights, but using it for portraiture and using it for outdoors and using it maybe even for nature photography. Because if you properly expose this film, you're never going to have a problem with these photos looking muddy. And then also if you properly expose these films and take note of the highlights in your photo, you can reduce that halation. I've talked to photographers and I don't use Cinestill because of all the halation. What you see here from in the daylight and even at night with bright artificial lighting, you could remove that halation effect by just properly exposing. Now, I just want to add a little film news here. Kodak has now moved away from the remjet layer. They now have a new chemistry which basically performs the same function as the remjet layer, but allows the film to be processed in C41. Now, I don't know what this means for Cinestill because they get their product straight from Kodak and have a contract with them. So I don't know if Kodak will still create the remjet layer and remove it for Cinestill to give Cinestill their branded halation effect. But for right now, Kodak is moving on to another film emulsion. So Vision 3 500T will now have a different backing. And I don't know how it's going to affect Cinestill, but for right now, it seems like 400D is really hard to get. So I don't know what it means for 800T. I don't know if they're going to drop the 400D line, stick with 800T. Also, as another teaser, I did get my hands on this new Kodak emulsion, and I'm in 35mm, and I'm planning a shoot and post a video about how these photos come out. So if you hit that subscribe button, you'll be notified when that video comes out. And what's pretty cool about this specific emulsion from Kodak that they're turning to is that there is no possibility of halation. So you're going to get the full cinematic look and not have to worry about the halation. Again, we're going to rate it at 500, but that's something that I'm looking forward to. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, leave a comment. It could be about technical information or more information about the shoot or the cameras I used, and I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed the video.